Hello everyone, I'm Meteorologist Charlie Ironmonger. Thank you so much for joining me today for a new special segment about science and ways that maybe the forecast may not impact you, but certain things, again, based around climate, science, and the upcoming future of really the green energy transition are coming into play here in eastern North Carolina. So I want to start out by highlighting a recent study done by the Institute for Basic Science based out of Korea in conjunction with several other university researchers based here in the U.S. on how ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation, and global warming are tied together in essentially a predictive climatological disaster that is going to become more pronounced as we get further out in time. Now, I want to start out just again, basic instructions on what ENSO truly is. El Nino, here is again what we consider normal conditions. A lot of very warm water across Indonesia normally kind of stays in that area, stays on the eastern half of the western half of the Pacific. But as El Nino conditions start to get going, we see that warm water really starts to spread across the ocean and pile up off the coast of South America and Central America. This is your classic El Nino setup. That warmer water triggers shifts in trade winds and jet streams that alter weather patterns across the globe. In terms of predictive events that happen within the weather, within ocean currents and atmospheric currents, ENSO is the true, the main North Star as far as predictive signs that can project what can happen over months' time. Of course, we can look at a forecast and get a pretty good idea of what's going to happen within the next 8 to 7 days. But whenever we're talking about full season forecasts, you got to look towards ENSO to really get a good understanding of what's possible and what's likely to occur over the winter and even summer months. We're going to be covering the winter months here. So that's a look at your El Nino conditions. La Nina conditions are the opposite. You got a lot of cold water upwelling off the coast of South America, and that pushes that warm water further back towards the west across really Indonesia, Australia, and it creates again another disruption in trade winds and jet streams that impact us here in eastern North Carolina. So let's get into again some of the basics on the study. A normal El Nino Southern Oscillation temperature flip is about 3 degrees or less. Now what you see here is the expanse of El Nino over the past since 1980, so about 45 years or so, going all the way to 2025. You can see again we've had some big El Ninos, some big La Ninas, but trying to again get a good prediction on exactly what's to come just based on that graph it's kind of impossible. You've got some years that are big, some years that aren't, and it's not really following a clear pattern. But if we are to add more heat to our oceans, more heat to the overall equation, then that leads us to see, well, a little bit more predictability within that those waves, that graph. This here you can see is the study that was published in Nature Communication from the Institute for Basic Science out of Korea of ENSO's effects stretched out all the way until 2100. And you can see there at the end, it gets a little bit more predictive. Those spikes, those waves start to again match up a little bit more frequently than what we saw over the past, well, really 40 to 50 years since 1980 to 2025. So seeing this, again, warming season, other ocean oscillations could actually synchronize during this type of projection, and that would exacerbate the impacts we feel off of our study on ENSO. So unfortunately, it does look like we're having some technical difficulties there. So I will read off again what that quote is saying. Our simulation results, which some other climate models support, show that ENSO's future behavior could become more predictable, but its amplified impacts will pose significant challenges for societies worldwide. That was by Dr. Sen Zhao, the co-lead author of the study and researcher at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Now again, this study was published in the Nature Communication, and its highlight for potential anthropogenic climate change to fundamentally alter ENSO and the relationship that our climate has across the world whenever we're talking about global warming. Now again, we will have more news and weather off of this, but let's take a look. Unfortunately, it does look, here we go. Here is our El Nino. Want to at least give you guys this before we get too far down in the weeds as far as what this study is really getting into. But El Nino, usually we tend to see warmer and drier. Actually, that is warmer and drier conditions here in eastern North Carolina, whereas La Nina, we tend to see wetter and colder conditions. This is again something that we'll have to continue to keep a very close eye on, but to highlight Axel Timmerman's findings, they underscore the need for global preparedness to address the intensified climate variability and its cascading effects on ecosystems, agriculture, and water resources. So this essentially basically says that as we get warmer, those impacts from El Nino and La Nina will be greater. So getting more rainfall through the wet season means that we'll have a higher likelihood of flooding when El Nino is around, especially around Southern California and even the Iberian Peninsula in Spain. And now on the flip side of that, La Nina, where it would tend to usually push more drier conditions, say across the Sierra Nevadas and the west coast of the U.S., that would exacerbate the opportunity for fire weather, for fire danger to occur. And again, those droughts that happen along the west coast of the United States will only get drier due to this increase in warmer sea surface temperatures across the board and the amplification of impacts off of ENSO. Now, we will have more news and weather coming up at the top of the hour. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I do apologize again for some of our graphical errors and technical glitches that we had. We'll get those cleaned up, and we'll be back with more news and weather coming up at 3 o'clock.